Okay, we're gonna watch it in double speed because it's too slow and boring. Okay, so
So this is my game against Grandmaster Levon Aronian in the Chessable Masters 2021.
damn,
This
can
is
you imagine having a game where you beat Levon Aronian? Man, this guy is serious about chess.
the second game of our knockout match, the semi-final match.
Oh,
So I was
GG.
black in this game. I won the first game, and I was sure he would be very aggressive in the second game to try to come back in the match. So we started with the Italian opening. Now bishop g5 is already an attempt to create unbalanced positions because in many cases black will have to play f6, g5, and weaken the king side a little bit. So it is not surprising that he chose to play this line when he needed the win. All these moves are pretty normal standard in this line. Queen e7 is, I think, a very flexible move because black doesn't want to castle right away, and black keeps the option to castle on the queen side, and also sometimes black can go bishop e6 and take with the queen. So after this move a4, black has to go g5, otherwise it's very hard to get out of the pin. Now, I'm not going to go too deeply into the opening theory here, but the idea of knight d7 is to transfer this knight to g6, where it will protect e5, and also keep an eye on the king side. Potentially, black can also play h5, h4, h5, g4 with the knight on g6. So after knight d7, my opponent went d4 and went back here, trying to get the knight to g6. Now, king h1, the idea of this is to transfer the knight to g1 or e1. For example, if black goes knight g6, then white has knight g1, h5, f3, and the bishop will drop back to f2. The knight will get out again on e2. Position is still complicated. I do not think black is worse here, but it's very complicated and a different story. So I decided to play h5 right away, so not to give white time to play knight g1 and f3. However, the drawback of h5 right away is that now, after the move h4, black cannot take on h4. With the knight on g6, black can take on h4, but here, black has to play g4. The position is still very complicated, and I think black is not worse, but it's very unbalanced. So in this position, usually the player who is better prepared, who has a better feeling of the position, will do better. So first of all, this is a very concrete threat. Black is threatening just knight takes h4, and then move the knight back and then play h4. So white has to do something about this. It's not easy to deal with that threat. So in the game, he played d5, which is also very logical, forcing my knight to go somewhere. I decided to move it to a5, trying to gain tempo by attacking this bishop on c4. He went bishop d5, also very logical move. And the point is, if black takes an h4 now, then white has f4, and the position is very messy. If gf, then white will take with the knight back on f3, and white has some attack on the f7 pawn. So I decided not to do that, but instead went for the move bishop to e6, offering the exchange of the bishops. White decided to open up the center with the move d4, very logical. Now I took on d5, and then I played this move f5. Objectively speaking, there may be other options, but I feel like this is a very, very concrete and aggressive way to play. And in practice, I think being aggressive is usually very good because it puts the opponent at a tough psychological position. Some people don't like to defend, some people are just good at attacking, and usually the initiative in shorter time controls plays a crucial role because people don't have that much time to think anyway. So in this position, white would much prefer to be a pawn down and have an initiative than to play with equal material or even pawn up, but having to defend. So that idea with bishop e6 and f5 achieve exactly that. It puts white into a defensive position. Now that the bishop on g3 is kind of misplaced, f4 is always a threat, and white is not getting the center open anytime soon. So he had to deal with the idea of f4. So queen c2 is a good move. Queen f7 defends f5 and g6 and reduce the threat of f4. Now white has to play the move d takes e5, although it looks difficult to play such a move because you open up this diagonal for the black bishop, and also now white has to play the move f4, which is again not so easy. If e4, white can take d4 and play f5, and this is very dangerous for black. So instead of e4, black probably has to play e takes f4, but then black loses the castling right, and the position is still very complicated. I'm still a firm believer in black's position here, but it's very messy and in a rapid game, perhaps easier to play for white because the white king looks a little bit safer and black knight is a bit misplaced. If knight takes f4, rook takes f4, rook e8, white can maybe go to e f1 and try to win this pawn on f5. So that would have been better for white, but in the game, my opponent made a big mistake with the move f4. So why is it a mistake? It is a mistake because now black can take on d4, and after c takes d4, black can just castle. And positionally, white's position is strategically lost. White has too many weak pawns, d5, d4, f4, h4, b5, too many weaknesses, and black only needs to consolidate and collect those pawns. So that's the reason why f4 was a bad move. So after castle, my opponent went rook fe1, I went rook fe8, he brought the knight back, I got a pawn, and then I moved the bishop back to b6. And again, trying to go after this h4 pawn. And white has too many witnesses here. It's impossible to defend them all. So black is threatening knight takes h4, knight takes f4, lots of threats here. So he went 93 and took his pawn. He still doesn't have any kind of play. And after a few more moves, yeah, black's moves were very natural, just consolidate and keep attacking those pawns. And here, after rook takes f4, white still cannot take an f4 because of knight takes f4, queen h4, everything. So white tried to strain some pieces, but with 3 pawns up, it was a clear win for black. So I finished the game nicely. So in general, this is another example of how to navigate complicated, unbalanced positions. My tip is just play sensible move, centralizing move, pay attention to your king, make sure you're not too pretty. Material is usually not that important in those type of positions. The initiative, the flow of your pieces is way more important. You should maintain that. You can give some material, a pawn, a two, but if you can keep that attack going on, it's a lot better. It's a lot more unpleasant for your opponent.
Okay. So the question is, what strong knight maneuver should black play to prepare the king side attack? And I remember in the video that the maneuver was knight d7 with ideas of playing knight f8, and then knight g6. Very interesting. Yeah, it's just personally I would play something like bishop d7, but it's just that I know nothing about chess. That's the difference. Okay, and in this position, which exchange helped black to take over the initiative? I think it's bishop takes, if I'm not mistaken. Pawn takes, good work. And then how can you take advantage of the black's new king side pawn majority? And then we play f4 because it's a king side majority, right? So f4, and then nice move. How should you defend the pawn? And then he plays queen f7, defending the pawn and preparing f4 as well as defending the knight for it, right? Okay. How should black win material? So in this position, white makes the mistake of playing f4, which is a bad move because we can take on d4. And after pawn takes, bishop takes, it's possible, but it's a mistake. So no. Good choice. How should you get your king off the open e file? Okay, so we play king d7 first. No. King f8. No, we castle. Alright, so castle then. And now we capture the pawn and then we drop back and then we have this. How should black aim to win a pawn? So, I guess that the rooks should stay here fighting for the open file. And the idea is to target this weakness, so we go queen f6. Queen f6. Knight, knight e3. What should you capture? And now I guess we capture and defend. And if it takes, we give a check. And then probably, and I don't know, probably we play g3. But that would be very bad for white. So that's why we just capture with confidence. Okay, so what should black play to give an extra piece? So we up a minor piece here. I think that he was talking about how important it is to keep the initiative going. And that's why knight e5 was the move. Alright, very interesting stuff. I guess that sometimes when I'm facing opponents that know my style and the way I play, I should try to go for this type of setups. Yeah, I should try to play d3 instead of d4 when I'm playing white. And sometimes when I'm facing e4, I should also try to play e5. But yeah, thank you for watching. Have a lovely afternoon, a good evening, or whatever.